Entry 10. Today when Elena came home from the shops, because her mother had given her some money to spend on some goodies. Amongst her shopping that consisted of a new floral top, and some beauty healthcare products, she had bought me a gift from a charity shop that she found in a box by chance, because she saw some DVDs in it, and she discovered a Britney Spears Greatest Hits DVD. As she knows that I like a few of her songs, and it only cost 50 pence, and was a bargain, she bought for me. I scanned the songs to see if there were any that I recognized, and I found 3, which were Baby Hit Me One More Time, Toxic and Oops. I did it again. I knew the first 2, because they were in the charts back in the day, but I didn't know that she had sung the last one, and I wondered where I had heard it before. After that, I took a shower, and when I came out and got dressed, I decided to listen to iTunes on my mobile phone. I set it for random play, and it was out of 300 or so songs available, and the very first one that played was Oops. I did it again by Postmodern Jukeboxes, Haley Reinhardt. I mean, what were the chances on that particular song playing first on the playlist? On top of that, I forgot that I had it on my phone, because I always use random play on iTunes, and that song hardly ever plays. Entry 11. Today, I had 2 more synchronicities that ironically were to do with 2 of my sisters and their pets. One is tragic, because of loss, and the other one had a happy experience. The former lives in Cornwall, and the latter still lives in Brighton. Mary. The sister in Cornwall texted me a reply to a message that I sent her referring to her dog, where I had inquired at the end of my last message if her man-hating psychotic dog was still alive, and she answered with that he was on his last legs, and that she was thinking of having him put to sleep, so that it could transcend his pain and suffering, of which I did not know until then. I immediately sent my condolences, and said that it sounded like it was for the best, and that all dogs go to heaven. The second synchronicity was Linda, my other sister, who lives in Hollingdon in Brighton. Basically, she lost her pet to cancer a few years back, and I was going to ask her if she had a new pet yet, and then I sent the text, and I got an immediate response saying that she had a new kitten that her daughter had bought her just the other day. You know, they say that truth is stranger than fiction, and that God works in mysterious ways, and reading, and I must say that I cannot help but to agree with whoever penned those above adages. Entry 12. Today, I was singing a song in my bathroom, when I was having a shower, that I carried on singing in my sitting room, about Harry Kane, the Tottenham striker, in the Premier League scoring a goal, and it went. The ball goes in the net. The master is on his game. I must confess, he is the best. It must be Harry Kane. Then, I watched Spurs play on Sky against Newcastle, and Harry scored his first goal of the season, which is a rarity that he took so long, as the football season is 2 months in. Further, my wife and I had bought Cosmos, the DVD series from the 1990s, with Carl Sagan, for Stella, our friend, for her upcoming birthday. She was visiting that day, so that she could collect it. Then, just after I had got it ready for her to pick it up, I was watching the news, and lo and behold, some scientists from Belfast were looking for some volunteers for a self-exploration of space by browsing through the internet on their website, looking at the data from 12 telescopes in Chile. They had 5 hours of footage that were of the cosmos, basically solar systems, and extrasolar planets and the like. Entry 13. Today, when Elena and I were watching the news about the invasion or war in the Ukraine by Russia, we were taken aback when the war specialists stated that we had been using soft tactics so far against the Russian invasion by applying sanctions. and that now it was time to tighten the screw and apply hard tactics, and we took it to mean that he was referring to boots on the ground, basically for NATO to take up arms against the Russians' unwarranted and pointless aggression. Unfortunately, he said that if this were to happen it could lead to World War III and the threat of using nuclear weapons. When we were contemplating the end of the world and what would become of us, we reached the conclusion that it could be either spiritual ascension or a biblical-style apocalypse with the Day of Judgment. Then, we saw a magpie land on the chimney of an adjacent building through our window, and we saw it as a synchronicity when applied to the poem about magpies, which goes one for sorrow, and there was only one bird on the chimney. Further, it is said that magpies have evolved into self-conscious birds like humans. In a nutshell, they speak to each other, use tools, bury their dead and lay wreaths when they attend funerals. So we thought the message was that if humanity wiped themselves out of existence, that perhaps the magpies would go to the top of the food chain with their newly acquired self-consciousness, and hopefully, unlike us, they can find world peace and social harmony. Entry 14. I have had a few synchronicities as of late. For instance, I had one when I sold my monitor speakers to a local pawn shop for £75 because I needed a music package to finish the rock opera that I had been composing for the last 3 months, and I had run out of money to pay for it. When I got the cash, I put the money for the package in the bank. And on the way back home, I popped into a charity shop so as I could buy some movies on DVD for my partner. I also got the music DVD ADBC for myself, which was the synchronicity, as I wanted the money for my rock opera, and there was a rock opera DVD for sale in the shop. Then, to top it off, when I scrutinized the rock opera at home, I noticed that it had a religious theme set at the Nativity. And my rock opera is about Christ's second coming at the apocalypse. So I will watch it and perhaps I'll get some ideas to eventually help sell my musical composition. Along with the knowledge that I was on the right track, because I had some doubts about my rock opera, as it had cost me a lot of money and I wasn't sure if there was a market other than War of the Worlds. So the synchronicity was God's way of letting me know that I'm on the right path with my work and that everything was going to plan. Then yesterday, I paid reference to a Manchester United vs Brighton football match that Elena and I had played on the computer 20 years ago that we recorded, where Brighton won 2-1, and I used the match as a music video on one of my music DVDs that needed one. Then today when I got up, instead of making music on my computer, because I had bought some more music packages to bolster my USB that I was putting together for a Christmas present for my friends and family, contrary to my drives, I decided to watch Brighton's match from yesterday, that I recorded from Match of the Day. I must state that I had no idea who we were playing, as I have been so wrapped up in making music that I hadn't had time to follow the football. And when I put it on, lo and behold, it was Brighton versus Manchester United at Old Trafford, and can you believe it, against all odds, the stats, or the predictions, Brighton won the match 2-1, and I realized that it was a synchronicity, because the match was played as we spoke about it. Then, not a synchronicity as such, because of the timing, but a strange coincidence indeed, as on Saturday Elena and I were discussing Dex's Midnight Runners song Come On Eileen, and then back to today, after I had watched the football match, I put on BBC One, and I watched breakfast TV. And would you believe it, they mentioned the song Come On Eileen and the band, and they were announcing that Dex's Midnight Runners were playing live on stage tonight to close the 2022 Commonwealth Games. The interviewer said that his favorite song that he was looking forward to hearing again was Come On Eileen. With that, I close my entries on synchronicities, and I'll move on to my precognitive experiences. Precognitions. Entry 1 to 3. Last weekend, I dreamt that a woman was carting me around the local hills from party to party, and from rave to rave. I told her in the end that I was too old to go to such functions, and then I went back home. This weekend, I read in the local newspaper that last week there had been an illegal, all-night free rave in the hills, and the local residents were complaining about it, saying that it should have been shut down. On another night, I dreamt of my niece Janie, and when I was down London Road shops the day after, I bumped into her and her family. This was unusual, because she lives 4 towns away, and was in my city to pick up some greeting cards from a shop that specializes in them. Another time, I dreamt I was having a conversation about Animal Farm. And I was explaining that the animals chased the farmer away. Then some animals were more equal than others, and turned power crazy, and after much suffering, the subjugated animals killed them. And that was a literal metaphor about the rise and fall of communism. When I got up, I turned the television on, and while I was watching TV on the news they said that there was a new animated version of Animal Farm out on DVD, and that it was 60 years to the day that it had been penned. So I decided to get it. Entry 4. Last night, I dreamt that I was in Scotland in a castle with my brother and his ex-wife, although in the dream they were still married, my aunt and Sarah, her friend, and also my friend. In the dream, I dreamt that I was starving hungry, and that I had found some biscuits, and was munching them. One of my brother's children came into the room. In the dream he was a child, whereas in the waking world he is 30. He climbed out onto the window ledge, jumped, and I was certain that he should have died, for he was at the top of the castle. So I stopped eating and ran to the window to try and catch him, but I was too late to help. He fell, and when he hit the ground he did not die, he only locked his knees and he did not even fall over. Then he came back into the castle where he recuperated. After that I sat with my aunt and Sarah for a bit, and then I awoke from the dream. When I got up, and was having a cup of coffee, a text came through my phone, and lo and behold it was my aunt from Scotland. She rarely texts, or calls unless I contact her first. So it was unusual, and so the dream must have been either telepathy, or a precognition. Entry 5. A few weeks ago, I had a violent dream where I found myself in a strange and hostile part of town, and I was at a bus stop surrounded by an intimidating crowd who kept harassing me and trying to mug me. At first I fought them off, but for each one that I successfully defeated or yielded, another one would come along in their place. So I decided to make a hasty exit and get the hell out of there. However, as much as I tried to get away, I found myself back at the bus stop. I even managed to get on a bus to God knows where. I was not sure where I truly was. The bus did a full circle and ended up back to where I had began. Eventually, when I was at my wit's end, my late grandmother appeared in the dream, and she told me to catch a cab, for they would know how to get me home from that location, which I did, and when I was out of harm's way I awoke in my bed. At the time, I did not write the dream down straight away, for it had been very tiring, and I just wanted to rest. Now, as time went on, I was not sure how to categorize this dream, because it could have been in the lower astral planes among the chaos that's down there. Or it could have been a menacing dream, because I had eaten a whole packet of cheese before I went to bed, and you know what they say, cheese before sleep brings on nightmares. As the days went by, I decided to not bother writing the dream down, for I thought it to be insignificant. As it turned out, it could fall into 4 potential categories. For it could be the 2 that I have hitherto mentioned, or it could be a synchronicity, for I had had the conversation with my friend Simon about the dream, and its outcome before the program that followed, but eventually I thought it to be a precognition as the experience came first and last. Basically, I dreamt it. Then a few weeks later I saw the Doctor Who Christmas special that correlated with it. I was up Elena's family's house at Christmas where we watched Doctor Who that I had nearly missed, for they were having fun partying. However, they recorded the rerun on Boxing Day, and I watched it the day after that with Elena's stepfather. It was, as I say, the Christmas episode, and it was about these aliens that attached themselves to your face, and brought on these strange vivid dreams whilst in the real waking world they killed you. They kept having dreams within dreams, and the only way that they could tell was because they were all dreaming from their own perspectives. They demonstrated this by picking up the same exercise book, then turning to a page, and reading out the first word that was printed on it, and they were all different. The books were identical on the covers, and should have been the same on the inside as well, and as they were not in the objective world, they were in their subjective dreamscape, or dream world, subconsciously dreaming the same dream from their own perspectives. In the dream, Santa kept coming into their dream to help, or save them. He was a universal archetype that they could all relate to, and they knew that he was not real in the waking world, so it must be a dream. In the end, the Doctor came up with the bright idea of getting Santa to drop them off one by one at their houses, and then they could awake. Eventually, after a few more twists and turns of dreams within dreams between the Doctor's sidekick and himself, they all managed to wake up and discard the aliens that had attached themselves to their faces and break free from the illusion. Before the end, I said to Simon that they should call a cab and get a lift home like in my dream, and he laughed with wisdom. The conclusion being that both of us recognized that Santa had been the cabbie in my dream, and his sleigh the cab that took them out of the chaos and back home, so as they could all awake unharmed. Entry 6. This morning I had a dream that turned out to be a precognition, but it could also quite easily be placed under synchronicity. The dream was pretty normal to begin with, in that there had been a holiday romance, and a fridge being stolen from a river house, with the thieves making their getaway in a boat downstream, and then a maid ringing the police downriver asking them to capture the villains and to detain them as they passed by. They said that they would, and so she left in her jeep to drive there to confront them. It was then that the boy, who was the protagonist, realized that this had all happened before, and that the maid had died in an automobile accident while on the road. Realizing this, he rang her mobile phone to alert her of the accident. Upon hearing this, she told him not to worry, as she was nearly there, and that she was sure that she was safe, and that it was just his mind playing tricks on him. He was relieved, and then he bid her goodbye. Next, the boy was having his lunch at a restaurant, where he got a vision of the maid being killed as she tried to overtake a car, and she failed and hit a lorry in the opposite direction. Then, his mother got a call from the traffic police confirming his dread. The boy then had another spiritual experience where he could see the plan for the rest of his day, and it seemed that he could see his destiny. The dream propelled forward to where he was in a toy shop talking to a professor about his spiritual experience, and he thought that because of it that our lives were all predetermined by our Creator, or set in stone. The professor stated that the findings of recent astrophysical thinkers believe that life was not determined, but was chaotic, random, and everything happens by accident and not for a reason, or has a purpose. With which the boy replied by asking, "Then, how can you explain my story, if that is true?" After that, the shop assistant began to taunt the boy by calling him a liar, and he realized that some things in life were determined, but other things were random, because the fight was not in his vision of the future. Finally, When I finished writing this story in my diary, I went into the sitting room and turned on the television to watch Charmed, which was about destiny and cheating death, making the dream either precognition or a synchronicity. Entry 7. There was a time in my late 20s when I personally tried to change my destiny to see if my past, present and future was set in stone or not. I was in bed with Sheila, my girlfriend of that time, and I was telling her about what I thought was a precognitive dream that I just had. Thus, we decided that we would outsmart the dream and see that if we could change it to see if the vision of the future was really set in stone. In the dream, I was in Topshop, and there was a black velvet dress that completely covered the body of the mannequin, and around its collar was attached ostrich feathers. As I looked at the dress, the cashier caught our attention by saying, "If you like that dress, there is an ostrich feather scarf that goes with it, and you can wrap it around the neck and up and across the head." We all laughed in unison at the comment. Also in the dream, I found myself walking down North Road speaking to some children. I did not remember what we were actually discussing. When we got halfway down the hill, the children went in the right direction and we went left. Then I awoke. That day my wages were due, and I was determined to buy Sheila a new dress. So we went to H&M instead of Topshop to break the dream. Afterwards we went up Queen's Road to pay the rent, and once we had finished we decided to travel down North Road, for that was the most sensible way to get to where we wanted to be to complete our journey. When we were just about to walk down the road, suddenly kids surrounded us, and Sheila and I gazed at each other in surprise, for we thought that we had outmaneuvered all of the dream's predictions. Then, I talked to the kids to see what had been muted from the dream. They had come from Queen's Park School, and were on a day trip to the museum, and when we all got halfway down North Road we parted company. They went to the museum that was to the right, and Sheila and I walked to the supermarket, which was to the left, like the dream. We talked about the ongoing event, and we were bemused as much as amused by how it all turned out. After we had got our shopping in the supermarket, we headed north up London Road to go home, and when we were halfway up I suggested that we skip over to Co-op and pick up some tights to go with the dress. It was when we were in the shop, at the cashier's counter, when Sheila brought to my attention that right in front of us was the dress from the dream, and it was as I described it. The cashier looked up at that point, and then said to us, "If you like that dress, there is an ostrich feather scarf that goes with it, and you can wrap it around the neck and up and across the head." And Sheila and I broke into hysterical laughter. When we finished laughing, we told the cashier about the dream, as she placed the receipt in the bag with some money off tokens for the future. On the tokens it was written Topshop, for in the store we were in was a section of the shop that Topshop hired from Co-op, or the cooperative. Entry 8. I remember reading some time ago about a school in Wales that was enveloped in coal dust, killing 130 people, mainly children, as a coal dust dumping site that had become mountainous had slid and smothered the school. After the event there were 76 accounts of precognition reported, and when they were looked at, 36 had come in dreams and the rest were claims of waking visions, or feelings of impending doom. I remember one detailed account that never left my mind, because of the horror. It was of a little girl who 2 weeks before the event had dreamt that she was drowning in a black sea. 2 weeks later her prediction came true, for she was asphyxiated by the soot and she was found dead. A similar tale is told about the sinking of the Titanic. Apart from this time, some people did make that change in time, and they were saved. There is another account where a mother dreamt that a chandelier was going to come crashing down on top of her child in its bedroom while she slept. So after checking on her infant and seeing that she was okay, and that nothing had happened yet. She, because of the impact of the dream, the reality and intensity of it, took her child into her bedroom to sleep. One could argue that it was her intuition, or some extrasensory perceptive ability, or knowing that made her decide. But it does not matter why, for it was her actions that made the difference, because that night the chandelier did in fact come crashing down. And if her child was still sleeping in her usual place, and she had, like her husband had said, wrote it off as just a dream, the youngster would have been killed. So, there you see how history, and even the fate of the child, was altered, showing that our destinies can be changed and we are not predestined. This leaves one pondering of why sometimes we can change the future, and at other times we cannot. Could it be that our future is flexible, or are we seeing our potential futures that are determined by our actions? It could be that there were lessons to be learnt. Or perhaps, so as we don't curb the enthusiasm that comes from all the surprises that our Creator has in store for us, for it would extinguish the passion, like watching a football match that we have previously seen, and already know the end result of, and life without passion is no life at all. I hope that my entries have shown you that by utilizing the wisdom from our synchronicities and our precognitions, that we can achieve a connection to God, find passion, and maybe even change our own future. I end by saying that Spirit is forever watching over us, and giving us constant support in everything that we do, to reveal that we all have our own parts to play, which is our service to God and humanity, which is part of the grand plan in this majestic sacred journey that we call life. My aforementioned entries got me questioning certain aspects of reality, such as God, life's plan, and the afterlife, which for some reason led me to question the existence of angels. I have had some experiences that I believe were interesting, and when I found some guff on a website, too, that correlated with my experiences, I just had to write them down. Angels. Apparently, angels come down to warn us of danger, or whisper in our ears to tell us to call someone on the phone, or even that someone is going to give us a call. They can enter our dreams, or in meditation, or even whisper their messages into our minds when we are doing menial tasks, like when we are working on a factory floor, daydreaming, or driving our cars. Angels can have wings like the Bible dictates, or they can be seen as beautiful, tall, ethereal beings, or even as regular guys. It is all down to what you want, or expect to see. When we get help, or have a spiritual experience, it is sometimes the case that a single white feather will show up out of the blue to signify that the angels are there and they are watching over us with a synchronicity. I begin with a tale from a book by Emma Heathcote James about a small child that fell over on a main road and was run over by a truck. The truck driver felt the impact as the wheels traveled over the child, and he vomited in shock and horror at the sheer thought of the fatality. There was a policeman standing by witnessing the event, and even he thought that the child should have been dead from the accident too. When the parents talked to their daughter in hospital, they were somewhat taken aback when she opened her eyes and asked where the person was that had stroked her face, giving her both comfort and assurance of her safety, and lifted the wheels of the truck over her body, so as she would suffer no harm. She asked quite innocently and naively, "Where is that beautiful person that was dressed in white?" When she was checked for injuries in the hospital, she only had a small bruise on her back from the accident. It is quite clear that although only the girl could see the spiritual being, that the being had somehow become physical with superhuman powers, which is self-evident because of the child's narrow escape and rescue. It has long been witnessed throughout history that when some people are lost or terrified, that they have seen what is known as the third man come into their focus. Basically, people who have been lost at sea or on land have seen this third man, just in sight in the near distance, guiding them when on land, or accompanying them when lost at sea until they are either found or are in familiar territory and are safe from harm. Further, there are people who have been caught up in a burning building that are mysteriously guided out of their terrifying ordeal by a wise, caring stranger, and as soon as they are safe, the third man disappears, leaving just memories and questions behind. Angels can also turn up in your dreams to give you inspiration or spiritual guidance. I often dream of angels who are beautiful and exceptionally tall, who hug or even kiss me and leave me feeling dizzy. Then subsequently, when I awake, as if by magic, I write a story or song. There have also been times when I am woken up from my sleep by a female voice calling my name, and then my mobile phone rings, or someone buzzes my intercom to get my attention and answer the door. I have had an experience, as I once crossed the road blindly in a busy part of the city, and was nearly hit by a bus. The reason that I wasn't was because of a push in my chest that propelled me backwards out of harm's way just in time. The bus was a few inches from brushing my nose as it passed by, and if I had not been pushed back, I would have probably died, because I would have been in the bus's direct path, and the driver wouldn't have seen me in time to stop. I could not see the angel, they were invisible, but they were definitely there looking after me. Also, in my past I had contemplated suicide, but an angelic voice and woman stopped me from my attempted euthanasia on both occasions. When I was in my mid-20s, I was having a bad time with Julie, a girlfriend that I had been seeing at the time. Basically, she was trying to transform me into her perfect man, and as Bob Dylan once sung, it wasn't me that she was looking for. I mean, I was a post-punk when we met, and she didn't complain at my anti-establishment views or lifestyle. I was also a libertine, because I had had a few long-term relationships turn sour, and I did not wish to get serious. Plus, in my childhood I was brought up through the stresses and strains of a dysfunctional family, so I didn't want to commit to monogamy, or to just only one partner. So, I had several foreign girlfriends that would come and visit me from their countries from time to time. Luckily, they didn't all visit together, because although they all knew of each other, they didn't socialize. Anyway, back to Julie. She knew what I stood for, as I didn't hide it. At first, she only made a few demands, but they soon developed into commands, as she got me to change my way of life by coercing me to drop my casual partners, settle down, get a mortgage and get a career. But, along with my culture, I was losing my mind, and it came to a head when I went down to the local railway tracks to jump under a train because of my inner turmoil, and I couldn't bear to live anymore. Nevertheless, before I did, I thought that I would just let a train pass by me before I jumped, and it was strange, because it was Halloween, and there were balloons and decorations too in its carriages, as it went on by. It was as if the people on the train were having a party, and it was then that I heard a small voice inside of me speak out and question that I used to be happy. Why weren't I happy now? Then, I got flash images of my girlfriend. So I went straight back to my home, and told her what I had nearly done, and also that I loved her, but that I couldn't live with her, and that she could stay in my flat temporarily until she found one of her own. And with that being said and done, our relationship was over. I must admit that in my past I have been unlucky in love, and it was a breakup in my mid-30s that I got on the bus to Eastbourne on what I thought would be the final bus journey that I would ever take. My actual stop was Beachy Head, a popular suicide spot, where I intended to leap off of the cliffs onto the rocks below. However, when I was on the bus I got talking to a woman, and we were both chatting about life after life. And I was going into detail about a book that I had been reading that was called You Cannot Die by Ian Curry, and I got so caught up in our chat that I missed my stop, and when the bus pulled into Eastbourne, which was the last stop, I came to the conclusion that it was not my time to die. I end my entries now, for I am moving to another car park to take a new position or job, so I bid you all farewell. Joe. Joe concluded that the Earth's future was in our hands, for it's in what we choose and do that create our personal and global harmonic destiny. That we must all heal the world of the toxicity that pollutes it. So stop ignoring or doting on the problem and concentrate on the solution and choose wisely, so all our earthly spirits can exist in harmony. Then he looked at the time, and it was 5:30 in the morning, and he had just half an hour left to complete his work. So he placed a marker in the book to indicate how far that he had read, and then put it back in his locker for when he would begin his shift the next day, and if the park was empty tomorrow, he would read some more of the diary, as he was totally hooked. When he had finished his contemplation, he went out, did his rounds until his work for that night was over, and then he went home to get some well-deserved sleep.